Oh my
All
God,
right.
Sarah's so prepared.
I know. Tell me.
How many pages of notes do you have, Sarah?
She's quiet. I don't know.
I've only
What?
got a 2.5 page Google Doc.
Yeah, nothing. It's nothing. I'm starting the screen share. Hello, everyone. Jeremy has less notes than usual today. We'll see what everyone else has today. But today we're talking about 1973's Jesus Christ Superstar, the movie version of the musical that was first a concept album. We'll talk about that. So I wanted to, before we get going, I will stop screen sharing for a second and let everybody introduce themselves. So let's meet the panelists. We'll start maybe with Jeremy.
Okay. Hi, guys. I'm Jeremy, wife of Jackie, friend of Sarah and Kyle, amateur video game podcaster. And we're just doing introductions right now.
Yeah, let's do it. Like for anyone new.
And I'm a heathen, I think. We'll get into that. But I feel like, is it weird to say that we should introduce ourselves as far as like spirituality?
Yeah, let's do that. Why not?
It's going to be a big part of
gonna
this
be an overlap.
discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm agnostic, right? That's where like you are not religious, but you are not against the possibility of it being true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what I guess also, what's your experience with Jesus Christ Superstar, the property, whether it's
I've always been curious of it. I own the vinyl and never listened to it. And I feel like this gets confused a lot with Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat.
Yep.
Because I had a whole discussion with my sister-in-law about like whether or not she's seen it, and to this day she's still not sure because it might have been Dreamcoat.
Yeah.
So this was a virgin birth, and so but if the birth was my experience with this movie, I'm gonna be trying real hard with the jokes today, so let me know when I should stop.
I mean, you're nailing it.
Okay. Nailing it. I see what you did there.
Oof. I feel like everyone's gonna immediately rage quit this network after this, which is maybe it's gonna be good. How about Sarah? You go next.
Well, I'm shocked that you would mix it up with Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. I think they're so different, just musically even. But I guess they are both biblically based.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But to me, they're so different. But I mean, I grew up going to church, so I know my Bible. My history with the play is I had an Andrew Lloyd Webber Greatest Hits compilation when I was like in early high school. And I remember I Don't Know How to Love Him was on there, which every girl who's an alto loves that song because it's low, right? The notes are easy to hit. So all the alto girls used to love to sing that song in the 90s, and would use it for like auditions and stuff like that if they had to like sing a song. So I remember just always knowing that song. And then I think either my junior or senior year, it was the Illinois High School Theater Fest musical, which is sort of like you audition for it, like the whole state can audition. And, it's this big theater kids like conference or whatever. And then on the last day they perform. And so I saw it live. And then at some point I bought the soundtrack and listened to it. But I had never seen the movie, and I had never seen it like staged by professionals, only by like high school kids. But I mean, they were pretty good. It was the all-state musical, so it was pretty good performance. But yeah, so that's sort of my history with it.
And how would you describe yourself like spiritually? Is it weird that I'm asking
spiritually, that? I don't know. That's a tough question. My favorite scripture in the Bible is from Mark 9 when he says, I want to believe.
So you're Mulder.
Yeah, he tells Jesus he wants to believe. And then Jesus does a miracle for that guy. And if you look at the Bible, if you study when Jesus does miracles, he says he can't do miracles without faith. But the guy who wants to believe, he still does the miracle, which tells me something about faith. right?
I like that.
Wanting
Yeah.
to have it is maybe good enough.
Yeah.
So I would say that is my, and it also happens to be the tagline of my favorite show, The X-Files. So it all works. It all connects.
I really love that.
I want to believe.
How about Jackie?
Hey, I'm Jackie. I'm married to Jeremy, and yeah, I'm an agnostic too, and was raised with no religion at all. And I even all my friends would go to church, and I asked my parents why aren't we going to church? What am I? And they actually were like, well, you're agnostic, which I always thought was kind of weird because you should. I don't know if you should
Pass that on, like a tradition.
No, it's not. But that's a core childhood memory of mine. And I had no experience with this movie, this play, or anything at all. And honestly, having no very little knowledge of the Bible made this very interesting.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of discussion and clarification happening.
I was like, wait, who's that? Pontius Pilate. I was like, Pilates. I thought it was I thought he was the guy that
Invented
inspired
Pilates?
Pilates.
Yeah,
I was
exactly.
like, Pontius Pilates.
That's hilarious though, because his debut, you see his name first, and you're
Mhm.
like, oh, Pilates, this is gonna get interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. I'll do. I also, other than going to my grandmother's church growing up, for holidays when we were visiting, my parents were not agnostic or anything. They were officially Lutheran, but didn't really go. We never really went. And then when I met Sarah, we would go to churches here and there. We got very serious for a long time here in Santa Clarita, maybe was it 15 years, less, something like that. Super evangelical, was into it, but had a lot of problems. And then those problems became even more so really from 2015 on, and all that entails, as you can imagine. So I did a lot of writing on that. So I have kind of a, interesting relationship right now. I'm usually typically a big Jesus fan, not necessarily a big Christianity fan at the moment, I would say. But also there's some things in the movie, in my Andrew Lloyd Webber, sorry, took the dog out, live update. My Andrew Lloyd Webber experience, I was a huge, and still am a huge musical nerd growing up. I would unapologetically owned the Little Mermaid soundtrack and Beauty and the Beast soundtrack on CD, even though that wasn't super cool for a teenage 12-year-old or whatever to own. But and then my parents were big musical fans from Music Man, Oklahoma, all the classic stuff. But I also had the Andrew Lloyd Webber Greatest Hits, which is an absolute banger album. That first one. There's a second one, not as good. The first one probably was my introduction to My Beloved Cats from Andrew Lloyd. And then, yeah, exactly. And also Joseph. We'll talk about that in the things. He did Joseph as well. But yeah, so and then Jesus Christ Superstar, I saw this once a long time ago because I was super into the soundtrack, and I remember it being super weird. I think I saw it as a teenager, and I was like, what is happening? So this second time was the first time I'd seen it in 30 years. It's been a long time, and it is really something else. Cool. So I thought I would go quickly to set the stage before we talk about it with our usual quote unquote fun facts about it to set the tone. So Jesus Christ Superstar, we mentioned, came out in 1973. Directed by Norman Jewison. He also had done Fiddler on the Roof, which Sarah is, I think, also a fan of, back in the day. And he also later did in the 80s Moonstruck with Cher and Nick Cage, and some other movies before that and after. So interesting career. It also was composed. It was first made because it was known to be, it was going to be controversial given the subject matter. So Tim Rice, who was the lyricist, Andrew Lloyd Webber, who did the music, they had done Joseph before, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, as you talked about. That was their first kind of pairing. And then they did this, but they didn't get it right on stage immediately because the controversy. They did it as a concept album, which Sarah and I know have been into concept albums before. Lin-Manuel Miranda has a new concept album out right now for his next potential musical based on the movie The Warriors. And it's really good.
What?
Yeah, it's really good. But it's just an album. And if it's successful, they'll make it a show. But that's the path. So that came out in 70. The year later, they did 1971, the musical, and then 1973 was the movie here. You probably noticed, but
Wait,
Other than a couple,
can I ask you,
Yeah.
is Technicolor Dreamcoat that old? It predates Jesus Christ Superstar?
it says it came out in '68. Was Technicolor Dreamcoat.
What?
Yeah, the
Dude.
play. Yeah.
Well, I guess I thought it came out in the 90s with Donny Osmond.
No, that was like the reboot. Yeah, like the
I didn't know that was the reboot. I thought that was the first one.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Oh, that's crazy. I didn't know it was that old.
But yeah, another thing you probably noticed about this is like other than a couple lines that were kind of segues between songs, this was a full opera, meaning there's no spoken lines, only music to drive you through it. Except for there's a couple in the movie, which is interesting too. It says they met in '65. Tim Rice, Andrew Lloyd Webber. They made this. They made Joseph in '68, and then they wanted to do a story about the from Judas's perspective of Christ's betrayal and execution. They were told it was the worst idea in history, so they made this. They made this to this concept album. They said they wanted to do. They thought that doing it as an album first let them work out the songs a lot better, so everyone knew the score and the vibes before it hit the stage, which I think maybe worked out. It said the Tim Rice, when he was thinking about wanting to do this, he wanted to do it in the style of Ben-Hur, like a really big epic, but Norman Jewison, the director, was like, no, I'm going to do a completely different concept, which we saw, and scrapped Tim Rice's idea of doing it like a legit proper movie versus this kind of like staged concept. It was the first credit for almost every actor except for Denon, who I believe was not Pontius Pilate, I think was Denon, and Josh Mostel, who was what's his name, the Herod. Those two, everyone else was fresh to film. They had done stage before. Ted Neely, who was Jesus, was his he was the understudy on Broadway, not the official Jesus. Carl Anderson was also the understudy for Judas. So they had come from it before, but they weren't necessarily the starring roles. And some of the other candidates, sorry, I'm going long, it's interesting, it gets weirder as we go. Some of the other candidates for potentially playing Jesus that Jewison had considered were Mick Jagger, John Lennon, Paul McCartney, Barry Gibb from the Bee Gees, Robert Plant from Led Zeppelin, and Mickey Dolenz from the Monkees, all of which would have been amazing. The big question, which I'm sure will come up as we chat, was controversy around casting a black actor as Judas. The director responded with, he tested very well. The film told us what to do. There was no doubt in my mind he was the most talented actor to play the role, but it is a choice. They shot in 20 locations in Palestine, in the Palestinian areas and Israel, primarily in the city of Avdat in Israel. And I was just watching a documentary about it yesterday to get ready for this. They were in an active war zone while they were shooting these. So sometimes the electricians on the film would have to be pulled off to actually participate in the war. It's crazy. And then the lyric for "Did Judas Iscariot Have God at His Side" from the 1964 Bob Dylan song inspired Andrew Lloyd Webber inspired Tim Rice saying, clearly Judas Iscariot was not an unintelligent man, and how much of the whole thing in the end was an accident given the politics of the day. Rice has described the Bible's characterization of Judas Iscariot as a cardboard cutout figure of evil and wanted to humanize him in this movie. And then finally, there's a couple other interesting facts. Richard O'Brien, who I won't say who he is yet if you don't know who that is, he was in the production of Jesus Christ Superstar. He was playing the role of Herod as a vain Elvis impersonator, and they didn't like it and kicked him out. But that inspired him to go and write his own rock opera, which ended up being the Rocky Horror Picture Show. So he was the guy that created that. And then also 17-year-old John Travolta auditioned for the role of Jesus, didn't get the part, but the producer kept him in his mind for later when he hired him for Saturday Night Fever a few years later, which is interesting. So anyway, let's go into the main event here. I'm gonna start sharing. I'll just share this so we can set the tone. Okay, so let's talk about our Last Supper here. I wanted to talk before we split it into conversations, like we did before in some of our past screen shares here, discussions. We kind of set up a little part of the plot, stop for a moment, get everyone's hot takes to move on to the next. And so we'll go progress through the movie that way. It won't take long because this is obviously like a kind of an interesting free-flowing movie, not a lot of interesting, plot breaks. It kind of just flows one to the other. But I'll start before we split it up with the beginning. So the story begins with a group of performers arriving by bus to reenact the Passion of the Christ story using contemporary costumes and props. Just before we even start, I want to split it up there to get your takes. Maybe I'll start with Sarah for this.
Okay, I thought that was a really weird choice. And I have to say, I agree with Tim Rice's approach. I would have really liked to see that. I would have really liked to see a big musical adaptation of this with all the characters and see the temple and the Pharisees in the temple and it didn't work for me the way it was because I felt like it was like they just took this stage show out into the desert, and I thought it was just a very odd choice. Like, if you're going to do it like a stage show, why do the movie at all? I don't know. I just thought the whole thing, it didn't work for me. It didn't work for me. But I did sort of like how it set it up like Mad Max at the beginning. This bus driving out in the middle of nowhere and there's just a cross on top of it and all these people in weird outfits. Totally was like Mad Max. And I did like the little detail that the guy with the, like, you know how the Roman soldiers all just had bowls on their heads?
Yep.
One of them was just like going like this, like whipping, and he was the one who flogged Jesus later. So
Oh my God.
little visual foreshadowing, but that was like the only thing I really appreciated about it.
Yeah.
I did like the tanks and guns, but I think we can talk about that later.
Yeah. How about
Yeah.
Jeremy?
I feel like the whole weird meta narrative where it's like you don't really know what time period this is, because for a lot of it feels just like old-timey technology and they're exchanging gold coins, but then they have like machine guns. And like you said, the movie begins with so we couldn't figure out for the longest time, like, okay, who are these people?
Yeah.
And the way it introduces them as characters, it felt almost sinister. The music had very dark, foreboding tones. And I mean, we'll circle back around to them at the end of the movie, right? Because I think that the end of the movie is kind of chilling when we come back to the bus after having watched everything. But I don't know, it almost kind of made it forgivable. I don't know if that's the right term, but just like a lot of this movie felt like it was shot in the same 50 feet of desert.
Yeah, exactly.
But it, like Sarah said, though, it's just a play being acted outside and we happen to be watching.
Yep. Yeah.
So I don't know. Like I don't know if it worked for me, but it didn't not work for me.
Yeah.
So
I think Jackie stepped out. I'll give her a second. My take, I kind of disagree. Like I think it was like probably an excuse to keep the cost down and do a cheap movie, but I didn't mind. I haven't really seen a lot of I'm going to set up the play and then show you the play type things. Maybe they didn't fully execute on it, but I didn't mind the framing idea of it. Like I kind of was into it. Sarah immediately said hot white Jesus reveal as soon as they turned around, which is more of a problem generally than this with this movie, but they definitely leaned into it. And then yeah, I also liked the bus with the cross just jammed on top as well. It's pretty good.
why is Jesus being hot and white an issue?
Just like white Jesus is like a common complaint, like Jesus coming from that area, that time period,
Wouldn't make
almost
sense
certainly
to me.
not white, and it's just like over time
Got
it's
you.
been a trust in the white guy to solve your problems kind of
And it's
Okay,
not even about him being hot. It's like, well, maybe we'll talk about his performance later. I won't go into it right now, but I feel like he was just picked because he looks like those paintings.
Exactly.
Yeah,
He
looks exactly like those paintings.
Yeah.
It's really chilling.
Yeah.
Babe, you were away for a second, but
Yeah, Jackie, let's get your take.
on the hippie
Yeah.
bus.
I really loved that. I thought it was really cool that it was like this like fiction in a fiction, and like to show the performers come to perform, and like I just thought that was like, yeah, like Jeremy said, like this meta narrative, but given the subject matter, I was like, oh, is this subversive?
Right.
Like, oh, you're performing this fictional thing that is just
Oh, is it a
like,
metaphor for religion? It's all performative and
Right. Is the whole thing
Yeah.
a yeah.
And
Totally.
I really loved like the setting itself. Like it was very Mad Max, and it being in the 70s, this time of like tension and like it almost reminds me of like now-ish, where we're like, what is civilization? Like, what are we doing? What's the structure? Like, I thought that was really cool and like kind of like setting up like why people search for answers like that in a time when there's like chaos or lack of structure, and it just reminded me of that. And I, like right away, because they were all on this bus together, it was very cultish and like very like
Yep.
I was like immediately I was just like, oh, like it I really want to know like the religious affiliation of whoever made this, because to me like immediately I was like Christianity is a cult, like that's what this is saying, like because the way the bus like they were just like immediately together and and also like the cults of the 60s and 70s, like I felt like it was totally like connecting to that vibe.
Oh yeah, like the Ken Casey buses where they're all riding together. Yeah, for sure.
We're like searching for belonging in this time period where there's so much like tension and like lack of clarity, and it's like it's kind of reflecting in that.
There was a second where I was like, is this movie like anti-hippie? Because of the way that the music is very like Night on Bald Mountain kind of, you know, when they're coming out and they're all kind of it's shot really close angles, it makes it kind of unsettling.
Yes. It was hard for me to decipher like what is the messaging here?
Like where do they really stand? Yeah, totally.
Yes.
Where do they stand on like the hippie movement and then the Christianity, and like but that made it interesting to me, and also like it being extremely queer coded was like, what is like, because the leather and the whips and the
pink vests and the
like hats and the like it was so queer coded, but then with the subject matter, like Christianity back then too especially wasn't like open to like the queer community, so I was like, I don't know, is this intentionally being subversive because it's like super queer coded?
Yeah,
but the queer characters were like the Roman like evil people. So I don't know.
Or Herod and this whole thing. Yeah, exactly.
The queer looking characters. I mean, I don't know if I'm being problematic, but
okay, cool. Okay. All right. So now we jump in. We've got this. What do you say, Sarah? Sorry.
I said before we go on, can I just ask which came out first, this or Godspell?
I think Godspell was later. I'll have to look. I didn't do much research. I think Godspell was like mid 70s, but I'd have to look.
Godspell's 1970.
Has that same setup where they're performing it.
Yeah. What was it, Jeremy? What year was it?
So same year, actually.
Same year. So right around. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Godspell, if you don't know, is Stephen Schwartz, who did Wicked. So that he was that's his.
It is the superior version, in my opinion, of this musical.
Dropping bombs. Yeah.
Sorry. It's better.
Oh, between this and Wicked, or
no? Between Jesus Christ Superstar, Godspell is also people acting out scenes from Jesus's life, and like it starts with John the Baptist and ends with the crucifixion, and I just think it's a better.
Godspell was released in March of 1973, and Jesus Christ Superstar was August.
Right. Although the play was before, obviously, so we have to see when
that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. But we'll see. Interesting. Okay.
But it's usually staged that way, where it's people acting it out and wild costumes and like
we got ourselves like a Deep Impact Armageddon situation.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Team Deep Impact. Deep Impact was better.
Yeah.
Right, Kyle?
So, I think I like Deep Impact better. I remember seeing them both. Yeah.
Bet you Jackie's an Armageddon gal.
Actually,
Ben Affleck.
I don't have deep feelings on either one.
I think I only saw Armageddon.
Yeah. Okay, so we're in the bus. Now we start the story.
We're in the bus.
So we're out of the bus. I mean, not in. So the story obviously focuses on the conflict between Jesus and Judas. Judas, portrayed by Carl Anderson, is concerned about Jesus' growing popularity and fears the consequences of their movement. He questions Jesus' association with Mary Magdalene and his apparent lack of concern for the poor. Meanwhile, the temple priests, led by Caiaphas, view Jesus as a threat and plot his execution. So I'll start maybe with Jackie this time. Your thoughts on that?
Oh, all right. So yeah, going to this like cult thing immediately too, I was like, oh, Judas. And I'm sorry, you guys, I don't know a lot about the Bible, so I don't know how
That's a good
authentic
perspective though
this
for this.
is,
Yeah.
but I was like, oh, Judas is the only one questioning Jesus, and he's like being like kind of ostracized for it, which kind of connects to this whole like cult vibe I was getting. That's kind of all I have there. I just thought it was very interesting. Like I'd never known that like, and I really like that initial like song Judas had where like, I don't know, he almost felt like he couldn't question what was happening, and that kind of like proves that it is like a cult, because he felt like he couldn't have that freedom to even like speak out against the movement at all.
Judas,
and I didn't know any of that.
Judas is extremely Jackie coded to me. He's sitting up on the hill by himself, like no one's listening. Like, but it's interesting though, you know, Kyle, that you said that this is like the idea of telling it from Judas's perspective is kind of what this whole story is. And I mean, and we'll get to scenes later with him, but I think he kind of steals the show.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's interesting, you know. So did I understand you correctly that casting a black man as Judas could be seen as like kind of problematic? Like, of
yeah,
course,
well, they had apparently when I was looking at it, like I think the original album, I think it was a white guy, and that, but I think the original show was Ben Vereen, who's a really well-known black actor. So like the original show, or one of them, had a black actor. So this was not the first time they'd done it, but it was definitely like brought up as a, hey, why you got to cast him as Judas? But anyway,
This was like a sympathetic character in this,
right?
Yeah.
So I thought it was actually a progressive choice.
I think that's what the director said. He's like, yeah. Well, the director was like, he was a great actor. He deserved the role. I didn't think, you know, whatever. So.
Oh, I thought it was like political commentary too, of him being one of the only people willing to like.
Voice that something was going on. Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
that's what
like,
you mean. Almost like a civil rights sort of in the 60s and 70s. Yeah. Hey, Kyle, can I screen share for a second?
I did not like Jesus in this movie. Like, I did not like Jesus at all in this movie, which is like weird.
That was interesting. Yeah. no, but like, and I think that was sort of interesting though. Like, is that he's kind of.
He's like,
no, but also he was. I mean, he knew he was gonna die. Like, I feel like he was bummed. You know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Talk about that, and I know Jeremy, you want to screen share, but I want to talk about that too, because I thought Jesus is one of the first things I wrote down is, why does Jesus have such a hateful stare? Like, he's just like staring people down in this hateful way, and I thought that is not very Jesus-like. And I guess, I don't know, maybe it was because they wanted to show this like power struggle with him and Judas, I guess, but, or maybe like we're seeing Judas's perspective, but I thought this whole thing was, every beat was Jesus rebuking someone or something. And I thought, well, who would want to hang out with this guy, let alone follow him? Like, this is not the guy who like all these people followed. You know what I mean? Like, I would have liked to see a little bit more of what made people love him. Like, because a lot of people Judas talks about how he loves him, and Mary Magdalene, and everyone's talking about, like, I mean, he's the Rizzler. Like, everyone loves Jesus, right? So I felt like starting the musical where it did and the way it didn't allow us to see that. And maybe that's okay, because that's not the point of this particular show. It is more about Judas and his like doubts and his perspective. So I can kind of see that as a choice.
Right.
It
just doesn't, I don't think it worked.
Well, I was, okay, babe.
Oh no, I just like, in this movie, it seemed like Jesus wanted like the power at times? Is that the correct vibe I
Oh
got?
yeah, maybe a little bit.
I don't
But-
think it. I didn't get the vibe
Or
that
like-
he wanted the power, but that he was more annoyed with people for
Yeah.
like where they were all zombified and they're like, touch me and heal me, Christ. Won't
lepers.
you touch me and heal me, Christ. And then he's like, here, there's too many of you, get away.
We've all had that moment as teachers, though.
Oh, totally.
We are
But,
like 9 people too many.
totally. It's totally relatable, but it's also like, I
Just
thought it was
long.
too much, I guess. I don't know.
But I liked that Judas was like, oh, you have too much power.
Yeah. Well, I think his point was that it was dangerous, that he was getting so much power
Yeah.
that they were going to come.
Mhm.
through.
Well, and he was worried about he didn't want the Jews to lose their power, which is the same thing that the high priests didn't want.
Okay.
Because I don't know if
Perfect
you
segue.
got that, but they were all afraid that they were all basically afraid of the Romans, because anybody that was set himself up as a king against Caesar, that was like a rebellion. So they were
Yeah.
worried about, they were like, oh, we just kind of got our power back, because the Jews had been conquered by the Assyrians and the Babylonians and they finally kind of had their temple and their religion back and some amount of like power.
Hmm.
So the worry was, though, the Romans are going to come and crush us because of this guy.
Right.
If that makes
All right,
sense.
so what's your segue for your magical slide sharing here?
No, because she's talking about the Pharisees and like, they're trying to protect the power that they have and they see him as a threat. So 1973, and this other movie that came to mind did not start filming until 1976. So I think there's an academic argument to be made that
Yeah.
George Lucas owes something to this movie.
To that hat alone.
Oh, no, but look, even down to the chest panel. Like
Yeah,
the
it really
Pharisees-
is. Yeah.
I said, and my notes said Pharisees are Vader coded. Oh no, Vader is Pharisees
Yeah.
coded with the cape and the odd shaped helmet and the jeweled chest plate.
It's
Like,
pretty amazing. Yeah.
I feel like I just stumbled upon something that hasn't been discovered.
Yeah, there it
So
is.
George
Oh,
Lucas.
and speaking of people that owing a debt to this, I thought Hamilton, starting with Burr's perspective,
Mhm.
and Burr's singing the opening song, might owe a debt to this.
Yeah, That's cool.
So
yeah.
just structurally.
Yeah.
Right. Now that's
I,
true. How could this half-wit orphan
Yeah.
son of a whore? That's
Yeah.
Judas.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I also loved his hat and chest plate. That was incredible. The whole vibe
The Pharisees.
between all of them. Yeah, I was like thinking more like Tony Stark / Infinity Gauntlet gems, but yeah, Darth
Right.
Vader is perfect. And then yeah, I liked that Mary Magdalene was acting as Jesus's face cooler in that song. I was like, I would like a face cooler as well. That's pretty sweet.
Sarah, you don't cool his face. Come
No,
on.
there's
I
nothing.
know, I blew it.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else on this part before we go on? Yeah, go ahead, Jeremy.
Well, because you mentioned Mary, and she was
Yeah.
part of this original synopsis. So Mary Magdalene was a woman of the evening,
Yep.
and my brother was saying that there's like very much strong implications that she and Jesus were lovers. They can't say that though, and so the Bible got edited so many times that was taken out, and she was just right. He just had her love, or she had his love, but not like that. But she has moments where it sounds like they're a couple. Did you guys get that too?
Yeah, I mean, I know. There's certainly isn't that like the whole like Dan Brown's whole universe is about that, like Jesus.
Oh, the Da Vinci
Yeah.
Code thing is about Jesus' secret lover.
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely been. But yeah, I think the vibes in this certainly were a little bit more than just.
Yeah.
But yeah, who knows? All right, cool. So let's move on. So Jesus and his followers enter Jerusalem triumphantly. He rejects the priest's orders to disband and the suggestions from his followers to start an uprising against the Romans. Jesus' anger is unleashed when he visits the temple, finding it full of merchants and moneylenders. He forcefully expels them, much to Judas's dismay. So, Sarah, what's your take on that?
I think the only thing in this section I wanted to talk about was Simon's performance.
Yeah, the
It
dance.
was too big for a film. Simon was like the freckled black
desert
man
that was, like,
who dancing in
intense.
the desert, just
Yeah.
extremely big. Like his face was just extremely expressive, and I was like, oh,
great.
he's a stage performer. Like, that was a stage performance. It was too big for the film because I was like, it's almost frantic looking and like almost uncomfortably like minstrelsy. Like, it was I thought it was uncomfortable. I don't know if anybody else noticed that or if that was just me. I thought it was like an incredibly odd performance for a film.
I thought it was perfect because I thought what was one of the more interesting parts of this movie was...
It was interesting. Like, I couldn't look away, but
yeah.
What did you like about it?
So I've always thought of Jesus as this radical figure where he comes in and he moves and shakes things. And he certainly does that in the temple scene when he's just fucking shit up. Like, it must have been so fun to film, flipping all those desks and just, and it's kind of almost Joker-esque in like the dining room scene because everyone's cowering away from him. But this whole film, from the very first time he gets off the hippie bus to the moment that he's crucified, Jesus doesn't really do much. He stands there and the hysteria around him and people are throwing themselves at him. The temple's kind of the only place where he really makes a stand. And so I felt the stage actor being really big and the super expressions like, don't you love me, Jesus? And it's like, Jesus is like, dude, back up a little. You know what I mean? Like, I sympathize for Jesus because I felt like a point that this movie was making was that it wasn't, or it's not so much about just Jesus, but people's reaction to him. And that's what the story really is, because he's not really saying or doing much. They're more radical than he is. That's my point. And so that's why I felt like the big stage performance worked.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that goes into your point a little bit about this being just the last 7 days or whatever of his life, where he has done all this stuff for 3 years that has been radical, and you're only seeing him like, I'm in the last phases. I'm just going to accept my fate. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Jackie, anything on your side?
Are we just talking about the temple scene where he like...
Yeah, primarily. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I guess it was just interesting to see him show anger.
Mm-hmm.
That's not something I've ever sort of seen depicted, like, or stereotypically. Why did he do that? I'm sorry. I was confused by a lot of shit happening. Why did he do that?
Yeah, it was like, that's supposed to be like their house of prayer and, sacred stuff. And they're in there. They're in there doing deals and selling stuff and kind of like profaning the name of it. So he's just like, what are you doing?
I think they were supposed to bring sacrifices to the temple. So when they would go to Jerusalem, I think they were supposed to bring like a bull or a sheep or whatever. But then people who were traveling, it got to be, because they're supposed to go like once a year, I think. This is like the ancient Jewish religion. But like, I think like over time, people stopped taking a bull with them or a cat, so then they would buy one at the temple to sacrifice. So then I think like what happened is more and more it became commercial and about like, oh, we can sell this stuff here to all these travelers who are coming to do their worship, and the focus became that like making money instead of worshiping, which was like they were supposed to do this pilgrimage once a year to worship and offer these sacrifices, I think.
Yeah.
It was the birth of capitalism,
right.
and
Right,
Jesus
exactly.
not having it.
He wasn't a fan.
I do love that how.
I liked like the dancing women that were like half naked.
Oh yeah, it was, the whole thing was very like downtown Hollywood. It was like the postcard souvenir stands and like the street workers and the clownish makeup or whatever. And I was like, okay, this was an idea.
It reminds me of like the dark side of hippie culture.
Yeah.
Like there was like the hippie culture that was all like lights and like free and whatever, but then underneath that it's like, oh, then they started doing like heroin and getting STDs and stuff.
Yeah.
I would almost be curious to watch one of the more modern versions, like the 2018 stage version, because like it'd be interesting to see how they portray this.
If they updated it or something,
exactly. Yeah.
I like that they were selling hand grenades in the temple. That was nice.
That was interesting.
When Jesus flipped the table of grenades, I was like, "Careful, Jesus! Like those are grenades."
Or I like the
Wasn't there, like,
sign.
guns?
Yeah, there were some guns.
There were a
Yeah.
lot of
Didn't
guns.
he flip something with a gun? I think he was holding a
Yeah.
gun. Yeah. I liked that the money changers had a sign like Western Union. It just said money
Yeah, this
changers.
is money changers.
It was great. I also, like Jeremy commented before, but the soldiers in the purple wife beaters, I love the whole decision. The purple or pink wife
Yeah.
beaters that they're all wearing, incredible. And then I also like when they come into Hosanna and all the leaves and they're saying it when the ones asks, "Would you die for me?" There's a freeze frame. It's almost like a record scratch. He's like, "What?"
Yes, I had that in my notes. It's actually this really dark moment of comedy because his "Would you die for me?" He goes,
wait a minute.
"What'd you say?" Like,
I'm looking at Jackie's thing here. Let's see.
Okay, this is like weird pro-trans Bible verse.
I think you should read it out loud.
I was looking at Mary Magdalene, and I found this, and I just thought it was really interesting.
Oh, it
Like
is
you-
interesting. A woman
Like
who
you
makes
become
herself
a man to enter heaven.
Huh. A living spirit like you, man. Well, are they saying that she's going to become one with Jesus, and Jesus was a man?
Yeah.
I feel like that's the translation, but that is fascinating.
Yeah.
I also if I may, there's a couple of great lines we've already passed.
Yeah.
But just I wrote down every time there was like a great line. And by the way, we never talked about, but what's the buzz? Tell me what's happening. That's a bop. Like, what's the buzz?
Oh, yeah.
Tell me what's happening. I love that one.
What version of the Bible is this from the Apocrypha? This verse? What's Meyer?
Meyer 1992.
Meyer
Or is-
1992.
Or is that like the person that did the research or something? I don't know.
The Gospel of Thomas, The Hidden Sayings of Jesus by
Okay.
Marvin Munn.
So it wasn't actually in the Bible. This is like they
Apocrypha,
found
yeah.
new
Well,
stuff.
it could be in the Apocrypha or whatever.
Right. But
Jackie
the
just
Pharisees call him just another scripture thumping hack from Galilee. And I'm like, that's a great line.
Yeah.
And then to conquer death, you only have to die. I love that line.
Yeah.
But anyway, the last one I wanted to mention was it was that when they enters Jerusalem, and I think Judas is talking about him, and he says he has that look you rarely find, that haunted kind.
Yeah, that's a good line.
And it made me think of Jackie.
Jackie is Jesus, basically. You're saying?
Yeah.
I get it.
I thought she'd have a reaction to that, but whatever.
She's like no.
She looked lame.
Okay.
Well, did we talk about the first pilot scene yet, or did we not?
Pontius Pilate.
Which no, we're getting to Pilate in a second. Yeah.
To his first scene?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you mean about the one where he has the vision?
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't talk about that yet.
He didn't have the vision. It was his wife in the Bible.
Yeah,
I just wanted to say
too.
that.
Yeah.
Of course,
I saw
they just
that
give it to
too.
him.
Yeah. They give the man the
The
line.
patriarchy, man.
Yeah. Okay, so Judas, conflicted and worried about the consequences, betrays Jesus to the priest for 30 pieces of silver. During the Last Supper, Jesus predicts his betrayal by Judas and denial by Peter. A heated argument ensues between Jesus and Judas, culminating in Judas leading the guards to arrest Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Jackie, you have any thoughts on that?
Is this the Last Supper scene?
Yeah, the Last Supper, and then like the garden where he finally gets betrayed. Yeah.
I don't have a lot of thoughts about this, other than I really liked the whole setting of the garden for the Last Supper. Wasn't it like an airplane that came?
Yeah.
Yes, I wanted to talk about that too.
So I actually really liked the whole let's bring in we're in this ancient land, but then there's a helicopter coming in and there's guns and there's tanks because I don't know, it kind of just shows how universal some of these aspects of life are.
100%. I wrote that down. I love the tanks, and I love after he betrays him, these planes go as if stuff's in motion to take his life. And I thought it was a great reminder that the death of Jesus was a lot about politics, military, religion. It was not really about this guy. You know what I mean? It was it was all the people he pissed off, which is the military, the religious powers, and the government. And so I loved that. I thought that was a really cool way to remind us, I guess, like that it was bigger than this one person. It was like all of this. It kind of reminded me of Luigi Mangione, actually, of this weird, like, just because that's like, so fresh in culture right now, but like the whole apparatus of everything is like coming down on this one guy. Now, granted, he did, kill somebody, which Jesus didn't do, but
as far as we know.
But I mean, people are seeing him though as a symbol, I think, of something bigger. Do you know what I mean? And everyone's kind of reading their own intentions, interpretations, and ideas onto him, whether they're trying to kill him and slapping him with all these big terrorism charges, or whether they're holding him up as a hero. Even the people holding him up as a hero, it's because of their agenda. And I think that was shown really well in this movie. Like remember when I think it was Simon was like, you need to be a little more critical of the government. Like you need to use your power to speak out against the government. I think that was in the What's the Buzz song. It was kind of subtly done, but he sings a verse about that. And then of course you have Judas saying like, oh no, don't do that. Like, don't threaten the government. Don't say these things because you're going to get us in trouble. And I don't know. I just thought, I think it's really interesting to watch this because of the Luigi Mangione thing being so fresh, like, and just seeing the way when there's like a controversial figure, like everybody like, it's, what did you say, Jeremy, about it being a litmus test for us? I think you were talking about something else.
Oh, I was talking about the John Benet Ramsey thing.
Yes. But it kind of reminded me of what you were saying. Like, it's like, you said it was a Rorschach test for America or something.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, so the Mangione moment actually also crossed my mind because like this story is, like you said, it's about society that's in flux and people who are in power losing power. And it's like, what will the masses believe in? What will most people agree? And like you can't help but wonder if we're on the verge of like a major shift in society because of our cultural collective response of fuck CEOs. People suffer unimaginably every day because of their greed. So, but we've never, like, as a culture, admitted that we all kind of feel that way. We've all become kind of Bane from Dark Knight Rises. But I think getting back to this movie, the scenes with the military vehicles were really stunning to me because, as Kyle said, it's an opera. Every line is sung. And then the movie cuts to silence of Judas running through the desert as this legion of tanks are chasing him, basically. And it looked like the stuntman was right in front of those tanks. Like, I did not get the sense that was filmed very safely. And then the shot when he finally betrays Jesus and the two jets, like he said, fly over. And like, you could tell that wasn't like, I don't think that was like a special effect. I think they flew jets to film that.
Yeah.
And
I mean, they were in a war zone, so they probably had jets.
Oh my God. That's dark to think that wasn't a plan. They're just like,
roll
it. Like,
yeah, who knows?
See those tanks over there? The shot's going to be great. It's like the Bowfinger approach.
Exactly. I was amazed. I think it was this scene with maybe the Garden of Gethsemane. Some of those high notes that Jesus hit, like only Jesus could hit some of those notes. It was like insane. It was like Mariah Carey caliber high notes. I was like, this is a guy.
Jesus and the one Pharisee that had an alarmingly high voice.
Yeah.
Yes, he did.
Okay.
Was that Annas? I think it was Annas.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So we're coming in on the end here. Jesus is brought before Caiaphas, who finds him guilty of blasphemy. He's sent to Pontius Pilate, who in turn sends him to King Herod. Herod, unimpressed by Jesus' refusal to perform miracles, sends him back to Pilate. Overcome with guilt, Judas hangs himself. So there's a lot happening here. So maybe Jeremy, we could start with your thoughts on.
Well, so my very first note on this movie was G-rated.
No, I know.
G-rated.
Yeah.
So when Pontius sends him to Herod.
Herod first, yeah. Because I think it was because Herod was in charge of the Jews, as I recall, right?
Oh, okay.
So he was like, "It's not my problem." Yeah.
But the Herod scene is such a mood shift because like Jesus has been caught and we all know he's about to be killed. And are you the Christ, the Jesus Christ? And it's like weird, silly, and if he's in charge of the Jews, kind of anti-Semitic, like, I don't know. and he's really disgusting.
it was
Jackie
totally
said it
was.
was super gay. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. I
I
just
wrote
was like,
Weird Haired Vaudeville song.
Mhm.
yeah. But then, yeah, kind of. Oh, and he's sort of Richard Simmons looking
Mhm.
kind of guy. Can you guys explain why Judas kisses Jesus when he betrays him, and then the Pharisees like all that is that just metaphorical? It's like the kiss of death, I guess.
Oh, betrayed with a kiss. Yeah, I think it was kind of like it was like I'm going to kiss you to show that I love you, but also it's the signal that this is the guy you want to grab to identify him. So it was kind of like he's doing something super hateful in an act of love, which is
Okay. They knew it was him because he kissed him. Okay, I'm
that
gonna
was
kiss
a
the guy.
signal.
He told the Pharisees, "The man I kiss, that's
Is
the
the
one."
one.
Okay, I missed that part. I missed that. Yeah. But my sister-in-law Kate watched this with us, and she brought the point of like, how long have they been filming in this desert? Because Judas's shirt was so much more vibrantly pink in the first scene, and you get the sense it's just been sun-baked and filming this movie. I don't know, Kyle, if you knew how long it took to shoot, but
I don't know. Yeah, I'll have to look and see what the
okay.
Yeah.
I just got the sense that the actors were real sunburned and real tired.
Oh, what's funny is that was one of the things I did see in the documentary was their first week there. The director said spend the whole week getting tan so that we don't want you to have your skin color change over the course of shooting. So get your base tan. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Did Judas hang himself in the
Bible
story?
Yeah.
Bible.
Yeah.
Okay. Because that added another layer of him being a Black actor. I was like,
yeah.
I thought that too. I was like, this is, along with the dance that I thought was weirdly weird, was the Black guy hanging. I was like, I feel like there's just some, I don't want to say it's like racist. It's like racist imagery in the movie, I guess I would say. Like where I was just like, whoa, this like was not caught and stopped. I don't know.
I think it was purposeful, and like that scene was one of the most violent things I've ever seen on a film. And I actually I turned to Jack. I'm like, I was waiting for it to cut away. I thought we'd see him get the tree and then we'd see him hanging, but no, the camera never leaves him. Yeah. And I turned to Jackie and goes, "How did they film that?" And she's like, "He's wearing a harness." I'm like, "He was shirtless." And someone pointed out, I think it was Jackie, said like, "Well, yeah, but it cuts to a silhouette at that moment."
Right.
So I think it was just really good editing, but I even just imagining it, like it kind of guts me sort of, and especially since he's been built up as a sympathetic character, and when he betrays Jesus and they're giving him the money and he's like, "You can help people with this. Imagine the charitable work you can do with this." And Judas is like, he's gonna get caught anyway. And like, I need this money and we need this money and he's gonna die. Someone's gonna catch him. Why not profit from it? Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
Well, another like layer in maybe an even darker interpretation that some people have proposed or theorized is that Judas actually Judas, among other followers, wanted Jesus to confront the Romans because they wanted him to like do miracles for them, and were kind of hoping to back him into a corner so he would have to sort of miraculously save his own life, proclaim himself the Messiah, and like free the Jewish people. So that's another interpretation that is even kind of darker and sadder, if that's what Judas was actually hoping. Like, I'll back him into a corner. He'll have to like step up his game, reveal himself, take on the Roman government. So
yeah, it's interesting.
That's even sadder if you think about it,
It's like across the Spider-Verse. They need him to die for the future they need.
Right. Well, I mean, Well, honestly, that's also like, to bring it back to Luigi. That's another thing. Like, maybe killing the guy starts the conversation we need for change. You know what I mean? Like, it's dark.
Right.
That's kind of. I looked up Herod to make sure I wasn't a total idiot. It's like, yeah, he kicked him over to Herod because Herod was Galilee, where Jesus was from, was under Herod's jurisdiction. So similar. Sarah, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to add, it was interesting that you said that Pilate was one of the only really experienced actors, because I thought he was a standout performance. I thought he was really good. He didn't really have a great singing part, like a great song,
Mhm.
but just his acting, I totally believed him, and I did not believe a lot of the other actors.
Yeah.
Like, I did not like Jesus at all, for
My
example. But
my
I
note.
thought Pilate was really good. Like, when he was saying, like, do something, show me something, I really believed he wanted to save him. Like, I
Yeah.
believed that.
Mhm.
When he's like, show me anything, do anything, say anything, and I'll save you. Just
Right.
say
Well, and
something. And he wouldn't say anything. I thought that was powerful. Just because it was sad, like, okay, Jesus knew he had to die and he wasn't going to defend himself. And then you've got Pilate, this guy who's powerful, but he doesn't want to hurt this guy. He doesn't think Jesus deserves to die. And his hands are completely tied because everyone wants him to do something. And he's like, just give me something and I'll justify it.
Well, I mean, it goes
And
further than that, though.
the lore here for me. Like, why did he have to die? To save?
So everybody, the priests wanted him to, the priests had come to Pilate because only Pilate could put someone to death. Only Pilate had that power. So that's why they were sending him back and forth. And actually, one thing that happens in the Bible is that in the Bible, this all takes place in the dead of night. This does not take place like during the day. This is like these powerful men sending this guy back and forth to each other, like, he's your problem. No, he's your problem. So no one actually really wanted him to die except for really like the priests who were afraid of, like,
Him
basically
taking
losing
power.
their power to the Romans.
But
So that's why they
why?
were saying, like, oh, we have no God but Caesar. We have no God but Caesar. And they were like, but isn't this your king? Isn't this the king of the Jews? So basically he was being pressured, and that's why he washed his hands and said, okay, well, I'm doing it because you want me to, but and his wife had a dream that basically, and told him not to do it.
Mm-hmm. Oh yes, because my only note on Pilate was that I also thought a young Alan Rickman would have been incredible as Pilate. The guy kind of looked like him, but can you imagine him from And then also that I thought that the Pharisees' chains were unbeatable, but Herod's glasses and chains combo, maybe the top one in the entire thing. Also, too, like Sarah could probably describe this better than I. They cut the part about Jesus and Barabbas, the criminal. They changed. You know what I mean?
Was that in the stage
I
play?
noticed that too.
It's in the
I was
Bible.
waiting for that.
Yeah.
Well, that was another thing Pilate did to try to save Jesus, is, like, I guess they had a tradition of releasing a prisoner at this one festival. So he was like, oh, you can have this guy Barabbas, or you can have your king of the Jews, Jesus. Either one can be freed. And then they said they whipped up the crowd. That's all the Bible says. The crowd was, like, whipped up and asked for Barabbas instead of Jesus. So
to be released.
Yeah, I don't know if Jesus's followers were just intimidated, and maybe that's why Peter denying him was such a big deal, because maybe Peter could have influenced people, or, like, asked for Jesus to be freed, but he was too busy hiding because he was afraid he was going to get arrested too. And that's why he was like, no, I didn't know the guy.
Well, and
Well, I like what you said about fear. One of you said something. I think Jackie said something about fear. So, I mean, maybe that's why it's the music is so dark and fearful.
Yeah. It just brings you back really quickly to the Last Supper scene, because we talked about, like, Sarah was saying that, Jesus is kind of unlikable and he's kind of, like, angry, and that scene where he's screaming at Judas, like, just go betray me, just do it, you fucking asshole. Like, I've always heard of this scene as Jesus being like, yeah, you're gonna betray me. Like,
yeah, go do what you have to do. I think
what you gotta do. I know. And it was his grace in that moment, but so that's why I thought that scene was so interesting. But
I think in the Bible he even calls him friend. He's like, friend, do what you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're screaming
too.
Say again?
Why what?
That's why I felt like this film made it feel very culty.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus,
he wasn't a benevolent leader.
Yes.
Like
was all silent but creepy, and then, like, charismatic and this like everyone's obsessed with him and he's just there as this figure, but then he like lashed out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's totally like what cult leaders do.
Yeah, when they're confronted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so he's like, you know, at the Last Supper, he's like, Peter's gonna deny me, and Peter's like, what? Hey, like he's getting all defensive and called out, and it's kind of funny. But then in this scene, Peter's like, I don't know the guy. Okay, fuck him. I don't know him. And it's just like, I think it was another stage actor playing it really big, but it
Really
was
big, yeah.
But it was almost comical. It was like, dude, you acted called out, and you're so adamant.
Yeah. Okay, so final part here, and we can go into our best and worst in rating. Pilate, though believing Jesus to be harmless, is pressured by the crowd to condemn him to death. Jesus is led to Golgotha and crucified. The film concludes with the cast, now out of costume, boarding the bus to leave, with Ted Neely, who played Jesus, noticeably absent. Jackie's nodding. I gotta hear Jackie. You're nodding. Let's see. What's your take?
Oh, I just liked how it went back to the performance piece of like, I don't know, it kind of reminds me of how when you exit a cult and have to like recover and like relearn how to be like a human. And like it did feel like this, the energy at the end when they were leaving, they were like, oh, how do I like proceed? You know, but they're going back to just like their normal life. I thought that was interesting.
But without Jesus, it's almost like they like
yes,
lost their
but
religion.
without him, he was like the cult leader that.
Yeah, it was almost portrayed with a sense of like relief when they were getting back on the bus. But so was there, Jackie and I were asking when we were watching last night, was there a significance to the 39 lashes when he got whipped 39 times and he was counting?
They were supposed to only give 40 lashes, but I don't know if it was the Pharisees or the government officials, because there was a rule they could only give 40, they would give 39 just in case they miscounted, because they didn't want to go over the 40.
When Pontius is like trying to save Jesus, and he's telling the crowd like he's not a threat, and they're like, get him, and Pontius is getting kind of mad that Jesus won't say a single thing to save his own life. And there's two great lines. He says, don't let me stop your great self-destruction. I was the hands of your damn demolition. And I was like, oh, that's poetry.
Yeah.
Like that's a good line. But the crucifixion scene, like, I thought was also really effective. Similar to like when the sound cut out with the tanks. The song, Jesus Christ, superstar, and everyone's super happy, but then in like mid note, it cuts to the nail.
Yeah.
And the song abruptly stops, and it's just the nailing from a distance. You just hear the nail being pounded in. It's really gut-wrenching. And yeah, you already touched on the fact that like Jesus was not getting back on the bus. So that was just like, I thought that was interesting. Is it metaphorical, like Jackie was saying? Is it like, is there some weird interpretation of this where they reenacted this so thoroughly that they killed the guy they brought out there with them?
Right. Yeah. Or my thinking was like, are they like another set of apostles where they have to go on with their lives?
Right.
Having lived through that now without him, it was interesting.
Can we talk about the staging of that number, Jesus Christ Superstar? Because
my only final note on that too was like Judas's dissension from the crane was incredible. Into that.
Okay, that whole number was like, if I joke, choreographed. Like the part where they're like, Jesus Christ, like they pop their heads up and they're like in a triangle formation, and it happens twice, like on both sides, and they're like, Jesus Christ. I was like, this would be like if I joke choreographed this number, like this is how I would jokingly do it, like, and it's not good.
No, I think it's actually perfect, because like, isn't the point it's making is that we've gotten so much into the pageantry of Christianity and how great it is to be saved, and like we're forgetting how horrible this was. And this was like,
no, I think this was
I'm giving it too much credit.
Weber, like, this is the big number, this is the big one, this is the showstopper.
I just think so much of the movie is just
Sorry.
No,
that's what I was just like so unsure of the message of this movie, or if there is one at all. Just because even the title, like he's literally calling this figure a superstar, which connects to this whole like weird obsession cult vibe. But then like it's also very sympathetic. I don't know. I'm curious if any of you guys felt like this had like a message, a clear
Well, I think the message was like Jesus was a superstar and he was famous, but I liked the I think the question's unanswered. Are you what people say you are? It's like, well, look at everybody said he was something different. One person said he was a threat, and then Simon thought he was going to lead them to like a military victory over the Roman government, and then like, you know, Judas wanted him to help the poor, like everybody, and then all those people wanted him to heal them. And then another thing that they didn't really talk about is the miraculous feeding, but there were people that were following Jesus around like for food. So like everybody kind of wanted something from him, or like I was saying, like read their interpretation on him. So I like the song because I think that is kind of thematic in terms of like, are you what they say you are? It's about all these like interpretations, like, okay, you're this guy and everyone thinks they know who you are, but like, who are you? And like, he never really answers. Like he's even quiet to the questions when he's asked, are you the king of the Jews? Well, that's what you say I am. He said that 2 or 3 times, right? You say I am. That's
like your words, not mine.
Not mine. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Or if he explained it too much, would that turn on? Like that was the whole line. That was always my favorite part. Is like, if you come today, you could have had the whole nation. Israel in 4 BC had no mass communication. Like, is the reason he chose then because they couldn't talk to each other clearly? Because maybe that would be worse. And was there a ration? That's interesting.
Yeah, can you imagine if like Jesus was like going live now or whatever?
Right,
But like,
exactly.
but I just mean the staging of the number I thought was really weird and bad. But like,
I feel like it was intentional. I feel like it was supposed to feel tacky to juxtapose it with the horror of what was happening to him.
I actually like your interpretation, and that actually makes me like it better because that does kind of make sense because it was kind of like church choir, like the
and everyone's in their white and everyone's like
yeah.
I think if
like, is church just a spectacle? Is that what we want? Like,
so in the off chance that Austin Fitzpatrick is an anime fan.
Hi, Austin.
Evangelion, hi Austin. Evangelion, Evangelion, one of the biggest animes ever. The central theme is like, who is a person if not other people's interpretations of them? You have no identity if no one is there to perceive you. And so Jesus is what the world made him. And I also feel like that also works for like, you know, like Jackie said, the title, I never really thought about it before, but Jesus Christ Superstar. So this is all celebrity metaphor.
Right.
And the way that we devour celebrities and we make them who we want to make them, and we don't actually care about them. And
that's actually a really great point. I never thought about the celebrity aspect, but that's a good point.
Yeah, it's like, what can you do for me?
Yeah, what have you done for me lately? And we all love to see a celebrity go through hard times and suffer, and you know,
and we want them to speak out. Like, what are they saying? Have they raised a statement yet?
Who are you endorsing?
Yeah, exactly.
I love the idea of how we like project our own ideas onto these figures we don't know. And I've been really into like how I've just been interested in like fandoms and how they develop like parasocial relationships with like celebrities to the point where like they almost feel like an emotional connection and entitled to like a celebrity, and like even like get hurt and betrayed if they feel like the celebrity does something that doesn't align with like their preconceived like notion of who they were. Like I don't know. Yeah, this just reminded me a lot of like Taylor Swift and like all these people. And how quickly fandoms will like turn on a celebrity if like if the celebrity doesn't like live up to their
there's this sense of ownership. Yeah. And like, oh, you owe it to the fans because we're the reason you're so big. And I mean, it's like with Star Wars, like Austin Fitzpatrick, join me here, buddy. Last Jedi is a great movie, and like it's not a good Star Wars movie. It's like that movie took freaking chances, and the fact that it upset so many people makes it interesting. But anyway,
but isn't this like what literally like Christians have done? They've taken Jesus, they've taken this story and then manipulated it to like suit whatever. Like, and there's so many different iterations of like what they feel like this story, like how they adopt it to suit their agenda.
Well, I mean, you march through the freaking tear gas and hold up a Bible and be like, look, it's like you're literally using it at that point. So,
well, I mean, what about like the whole gun culture around the Christian right is one of the wildest things to me.
Yeah.
Because if there's one thing this Jesus Christ Superstar actually got right is when he keeps saying, why are you so eager to fight? Why are you so eager to fight? Like, if there's one thing Jesus was very clear on, it was don't kill people. Turn the other cheek.
But he was only talking about certain lives.
You, like, literally, if someone abuses you and mistreats you, like, let them.
Right.
Let them.
Yeah.
And I have a question about like, I mean, the Romans in this story, aren't they in essence like the colonizers?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, and wouldn't Jesus then be anti like colonizer?
Mm-hmm.
Which then
a lot of people thought he was, like, he said things that people thought were like, oh, the Roman, because like there's a lot of passages in the Bible where they're like, oh, don't you know that these people were upset by what you just said? Don't you know that this group was upset by what you just said? And he's just always said, well, like, I'm telling the truth, as and didn't really care. But it was, all of those came from other people, all those interpretations of like, oh, what you said offended the Romans. Oh, what you said offended the Pharisees, or
and
whatever.
Didn't Christianity become the superpower it is today because it was like the inventors of the printing press, and the first people who had access to the printing press printed the Bible, and that was the internet back then. That's how things spread. Right?
Yeah, the Gutenberg Bible. Yeah, that's like the whole
thing. Yeah. I forgot what my point was.
Sure, that's part of it. I think. What is it? Who converted? Was it like Constantine?
I think that's right. Something. Yeah.
I feel like that was a big leap.
Oh yeah, you're right. That was the big moment.
that was the big one.
That was the
cool.
big one.
Let's do best and worst parts real quick while we're here. So, what do you think was a great choice in this movie? What do you think was questionable, to say the least? Stop sharing for now. How about Sarah? You can start.
I think I already kind of shared my best and worst. Best being I really liked the military stuff. The worst was probably Jesus's hateful stare. But I do want to give a shout out to the scene where he says, Mary's given me what I need right here and now. And immediately the camera goes to groin thrusts.
I didn't even notice that.
Immediately. So I liked that part.
Can I go next?
Yeah.
Well, I think we haven't acknowledged it yet. It's not my best thing, but so my best thing was also the military shots, the tanks, the jets, it's all the moments where it's like visually just jarring and stunning, and like you're gonna think about this, like the Judas hanging silhouette. But we never really talked about the actress who played Mary. Like, I feel like she had a really pretty voice, and those songs are really pretty and utterly forgettable because they don't really move the plot forward, and it's kind of sad. But those songs are really great, and like I think
they're the best songs.
Yeah, no, the song is great, but it doesn't really affect the plot of Jesus's betrayal.
No, but I think hers are the most
melodic and
well, those are the ones that I've always heard, other than the Jesus Christ Superstar one. The two songs I've always heard are the Try Not to Get Worried, that one, and I Don't Know How to Love Him.
Yeah, I feel like this almost belongs in the same category to me as like Rent, where it's like the songs are better than the actual story /movie. Like I'm never really
Yeah.
compelled to watch Rent, but I like listening to the
Listening
songs.
to it.
I don't think
I
I'll
thought
ever
she was
watch
really
this.
beautiful too, Mary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really beautiful in a natural way that you don't always see anymore. Like
Yeah.
she looked like a real
Um,
person, but very beautiful, I thought.
and I think the worst part of this movie is just the way it was. I guess I'll say the way it was shot, because they weren't building any set throughout in the desert. But the filmmaker didn't establish locations. We had no way of knowing where we were or what the mood was going to be. So I felt like I was constantly like, okay, wait,
Is this the same ruin we just saw? Is this a different ruin?
is this the same canyon as the canyon before? And I feel like a good filmmaker will show you places in relation to each other, and each place will be associated with a mood or a character.
Yeah.
So you can kind of like
Get the
you can
geography,
vibe
yeah.
shift with the movie. I always felt like I was trying to catch up to this movie because all those rocks just kind of blended together. So it was hard to watch at points.
Yeah.
It got kind of boring, but I think the pros outweigh the cons.
Yeah. My take was that I liked the framing device. I actually thought that was cool. Like being able to, just because it made it feel universal, that it could have happened anytime and continues to happen. But I agree that like there was no idea like where you were at any point. Like I like the idea of the framing, but not the execution. And I stole this from Sarah, but my worst part, I thought, like Jackie was mentioning that the Herod scene was kind of gay. I thought they should have gone way gayer. Sarah suggested they bring in Divine. I don't know if you're familiar with Divine, like a legendary like 70s drag queen. But that
It
would
should have been a cool drag queen.
That would have
not
been
like this
incredible.
weird guy.
Yeah. But yeah, I feel like they went partially there, but they could have gone even further.
Should have committed.
Consider they could have been like even more debaucherous and stuff with his.
It was like Newman. It was like Newman.
Yeah,
doing it.
Newman from Seinfeld would have crushed you as well.
Yeah, that would have been good.
Yeah.
Wayne Knight.
Yeah.
I totally agree with Kyle. Like, I feel like I was expecting it to be way more campy. Like, I wanted it to go even more, like, further, like, campier, more something, like, subversive. I don't know. But yeah, it wasn't. It was, like, kind of gay, but it could have been way more queer-coded. And my favorite parts were definitely, like, I love just, like, the desert Mad Max vibes overall. Like, I actually liked that part.
Well, and, like, the queer-coded nature of the movie kind of reminds me of, like, how, like, Hamilton is, like, primarily black actors telling the story of white colonizing men, you know, who treated black people very badly. And like it's like the subversion is interesting. And like you have a movie about Jesus Christ, Christianity historically not a very supportive religion to gay rights, and like by making it so gay at points, I thought that was interesting and an interesting subversion of expectation.
Cool.
Yeah,
all right, so sorry, what'd you say, Jackie?
Oh no, I just didn't think it was enough to even be subversive.
I do it. Yeah. Cool. So I thought I would, before we give our final ratings, just a couple things that we do usually are reactions from other people. So quotes from critics, etc., how this was received when it came out. So it currently has a 50% approval rating, which is pretty perfect for the split we've been seeing too, on Rotten Tomatoes. Average rating of 6 out of 10. Generally the consensus reads, Jesus Christ Superstar has too much spunk to fall into sacrilege, but miscasting and tonal monotony halts the musical's groove. Washington Post panned it as a work of kitsch that does nothing for Christianity except to commercialize it. The National Jewish Community Relations Advisory Council described it as an insidious work, worse than the stage play, in dramatizing the old falsehood of the Jews' collective responsibility for the death of Jesus, and said it would revive religious sources of anti-Semitism. The show, famous American evangelist Billy Graham wasn't a fan. He accused it of bordering on blasphemy and sacrilege. He objected to the fact that it leaves out the resurrection. That was the big thing at the end. They kind of allude to it, but they do not show any resurrection. That was a choice he made. If there's no resurrection, there is no Christianity. Though he did acknowledge if the production causes young people to search their Bibles, to that extent, it may be beneficial. And then finally, Roger Ebert gave the film 3 out of 4 stars, calling it a bright, sometimes breathtaking retelling of the source material. He praised it as an improved version of the commercial schlock of the source material, and being light instead of turgid, outward-looking instead of narcissistic. And Norman Jewison was able to show this film to Pope Paul VI, who openly loved what he saw. He said, "Mr. Jewison, not only do I appreciate your beautiful rock opera film, I believe it will bring more people around the world to Christianity than anything ever has before."
Whoa.
Yeah, I was like, thanks, Pope.
And are we not going to talk about how Jewison made the story of the King of the Jews?
Yeah, right. He really leaned into it. Cool. So finally, as we talked about on the past shows, we have the Strauss scale rating, which is Jeremy's family scale of, actually, I'll let you articulate it just so we can have
Well, so I feel somewhat uncomfortable about this one, because like when we first started this movie, I was like, are Kyle and Sarah trying to save my eternal soul? Like, why are they having us watch this? It is so sincere and humorless and straightforward that it felt kind of like I was at church and it was just, passages that were filmed. So before we get into the Strauss scale, are we taking into consideration, am I evaluating the Bible as a story?
Yeah, you're basically rating the Bible on 1 to 10.
That's what I'm uncomfortable about this right now.
The musical, you're rating.
I think you're rating
this movie.
Right, but the story
Separate
though is a part of the movie. So anyway, the Strauss scale.
Yes, but you're not. But there's many versions of that story. I mean,
it is. I think actually, snarkiness aside, I think the Bible actually is a really interesting story. So Strauss scale is 1 through 10, and 1 meaning awful, 10 being perfect. And if you don't regret watching it, it starts at a 5, and then you follow your heart to the score. So I didn't really enjoy my watch. I like this movie more talking to you guys, and appreciating the moments of it, and like the singer, like that singer was really good, and like that was a really interesting choice. I don't feel like I could ever give something a 7 if I was like, I'd never watch it like ever again. So, but I don't regret watching it. So I think it's a 5 that gets bumped up to a 6 for all these really powerful moments and interesting choices. So I'm gonna go at a 6.
Nice.
Which makes it lower than Popeye, and I feel weird about that. No, the same score. I think Popeye also got a 6. So probably going to hell for this one. But Jesus Christ Superstar, the story of Christ, about as good as Popeye starring Robin Williams.
Incredible. Sarah.
what did I give Popeye?
I don't remember.
You also gave it a 6.
A 6?
Yep.
I almost regretted watching this. It's just weird. I feel like the Strauss scale. I'm not sure if I almost never regret watching something because I'm like, okay, I had the experience and we get to talk about it. So I feel like this movie's more like a 4 for me, but I can't say I regret watching it. So I guess on the Strauss scale, it's a 5.
Which it might have actually been your Popeye rating.
But yeah, I think I enjoyed Popeye more, honestly. Just because it was so much. Because Popeye was bad, like so bad it was funny, and this wasn't as bad as that, and it was joyless. It was a joyless slog.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle, the AI has to make a TikTok out of this.
Yes, for sure. For sure. How about Jackie?
Yeah, like talking to you guys made me like it more. Like some of the points you guys made, I was like, whoa, maybe this movie's doing something interesting. But I agree, it was like very, very humorless, very joyless. Like
Angry.
Like
Dirty.
some of the imagery was really cool, but that was literally only like 2 scenes where I was like, oh, cool. Like maybe 3 scenes. So 5 or 6? Is 5, I regret watching it.
5 is you don't regret watching it.
Okay, yeah, 5 then.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I'm probably a 6. Like if they had executed some of the stuff better, it would move it to a 7. But like, yeah, I agree. But it is like there is some weirdness to it that I enjoyed overall. But yeah, I would say probably a 6. It would be interesting to see if they remade it ever. If someone else, like if the guy from Wicked took a crack at it or something, it'd be interesting to see.
Yeah.
He did. Cool.
They
Well,
could make it so cool.
Yeah. What'd you say?
I
Sarah?
had one question. I think Jesus was kind of short, and I noticed that Judas kept hunching down.
Mm.
He was singing all the songs like Quasimodo. And I was like, did they tell him to do that so he wouldn't be like way taller than Jesus? Because I
Maybe.
think he was quite a bit taller than Jesus.
I like to think of Jesus as a little man.
He was a cute little guy, but like I was just like, why is Judas so like hunched? And then I was like, I wonder if they told him to do that so he wouldn't like
Yeah.
You
power
wouldn't
over
overpower.
Jesus.
Amazing.
I just thought that was odd.
The tallest dude in the documentary was Caiaphas by far. When they had a reunion, and he was like way taller than anyone else. But Judas is dead. He died in like 2004 or 5 or something. So he didn't come. So I couldn't see how he matched up to him. But
He
everyone
looks
else,
pretty tall.
he probably was. Yeah.
Caiaphas was his real voice? That guy really sang that part?
Yeah. He's like
It's funny, he didn't look like a guy with a super low voice.
deep
to
voice.
me.
I know. Yeah, it was weird. Cool. Any final thoughts before we head off? And we'll head off for the
Can we do
holidays.
something fun next time? I'm sick of
We'll do-
joyless.
We lean into even more depressing. It's like now we're talking Nosferatu. Let's see.
Everything we've watched has been so dark.
We'll pep it up.
Hi, and the witches.
Return to Oz was kind of fun.
And dark.
At least that was dark in a creepy, cool fairy tale kind of a way. And
I mean,
there
if
was
there's
some
anything-
sweetness there.
If there's anything that's going to be super bright and cheery, it's going to be January of 2025 for sure.
What about what was the Terry Gilliam one we wanted to watch?
Oh,
None
what
of
was
us have
it?
seen it, right?
Oh yeah, Brazil.
Brazil.
Right. That's also, I think, pretty dark and depressing too.
Okay.
That's really dark.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I don't. Okay,
We'll see. Yeah,
I'll take back what I said. I want to watch Brazil.
Okay.
I think we should do that
Brazil.
next.
Yeah. All right.
Just a
Well,
Still looks interesting.
all right. We'll shake it out. I can't believe I haven't seen it. It's been like forever. It's been on the list, but yeah, that'll be cool. Well, cool. Thank you, everyone. We'll share the replay. Enjoy your time
Okay.
with JC. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.